everybody, Lawrence here with 30 Basic Terrain, coming at you with another one. Dollar Tree. They have these plastic dollhouses, or at least the front half of a plastic dollhouse that comes with, a couple little plastic dolls and some furniture. But the thing is, the scale is perfect for 28 or 32 millimeter miniatures. Door height, windows, they fit perfectly. So if you get two of them, because like I said, they're only the front half of the house. If you get two of them and they fit perfectly together, they make a full house. Now, granted, the footprint of the building is a little on the small side, but let's be honest, who cares? They will make a really quick they can make a really quick addition to your tabletop. Now, it does require two of them, and they have two different styles. They have this style, which is what I used. They also have this style, which my friend Recon used. Now, I like how his turned out, but I want to do one in my style. And I have seen others on YouTube do versions of this. I mean, I've seen people who have nothing to do with our hobby use these dollhouses for like decorations and stuff. But I want to put one together and do it in my style, so it matches along with all the other houses that I have. So I want to show you how I went from this pink and white and purple monstrosity to this. Not that hard, really. All it required was what I normally do and a lot of glue painting, oddball stuff. So before I get to the video, I want to give a big shout out and thank you to my patrons, Dungeon Matron and Corel. It may not be a lot to you guys, but to me it means the world that you give monthly to help the channel out, and I do appreciate it. So thank you very much. All right, let's get to it, guys. Okay, well, I've got my two halves. Now, they had these little tabs on either side, and I've already gone ahead and cut those off. They're meant for connecting the houses together, but we don't want them because they're going to get in the way. Now, I don't want two doors, so I'm going to pop the one door off and then pop this little decorative piece off. Save them for later because these windows and doors are almost make the thing worth it on its own. Also, I'm going to pop out one of these side windows because I'm cutting down on the amount of windows. It's pretty simple, and then I have to cut away this little stoop and a couple of the other little bits and pieces to make it more flat and easier to do for a step later. Pretty simple process, and I'm going to use this chipboard or a piece of cardboard I got out of, I think, a cat food pack. I don't know. But I just need to be able to make it flat for work further down the road. So smoothing off these decorative little pieces of plastic just to make it easier for a later step. And of course, here I'm just sizing up the chipboard for cutting so I can actually attach it to the front and have a flat surface to work off of, just to make life easier. You could use scissors if you want to, but I like using the knife because I get a cleaner cut that way. Pretty simple. Test fit it. It's always good to test fit before you actually slap down some glue, because if it doesn't work, you're kind of screwed. Now, I had already went ahead and hot glued that cardboard down, and my initial thought was I want the inside to be black, just so, because I'm not putting any glass or resin in the windows themselves, so I just wanted it to be dark inside, because I don't do playable interiors, and with this build, even if I usually did it, it doesn't work. Now, I made a mistake and started priming prior to doing this. The paint would just rub off, so I'm just gonna give it a quick light sanding over all the outside. I'm gonna leave the inside alone because it's not gonna matter. Now, I've decided I actually wanted to board off all the windows from the inside, and I'm using the same chipboard that I used on the outside earlier. And I'm just going to cut small pieces and then hot glue them in place over all the windows just so you can't see inside. Now here, I'm actually covering up one of the windows on the side. My initial thought, honestly, was I hadn't completely decided whether or not I was going to add a chimney to this build or not, and I wanted to eliminate at least one of the windows on the ends, regardless of whether I did that or not. So I'm just using the chipboard like I did on the back side of this house, and just making a flat surface to work off of. But if you can tell from the intro, I decided against doing the chimney, but I still didn't want two windows on this end of the build. Now, I decided against using the door that came with it, though it would have been fine. But I wanted this house to match somewhat along with the rest of my houses, or at least the style. So I took the doorway and I'm smoothing off all the decorative pieces here, and I took off that decorative piece, the door's gone, and again using my Dremel just to get rid of that large extra bumps of plastic that I don't want to be seeing through what I'm going to be doing later. Now I'm using the actual door that came with it to gauge how big I need to put on a backing here, because what I'm doing is I'm going to hot glue this piece to the inside so I have something to build the door off of from the outside. Pretty simple, just eyeball the height wise and just hot glue it in place, and then I'll have something to work off of when I eventually build the door itself. And here I'm just using some super glue gel I got from the Dollar Tree. And I'm going to glue the two halves together, being that all the windows and doors have been covered up from the inside. So I no longer need to, for this build, I no longer need to work on anything from the inside. So I'm at the point where I need to glue it together. Plastic weld would have been a better option if I had it, but I didn't, so I went with super glue gel, and the gel will help fill up some of those cracks, though everything's going to be covered up anyway, so. And here I'm using the original door from the building to gauge how big I need to make the door. Now I'm making this in the same style I've made for my other buildings, because like I said before, I want this to be able to fit style-wise into my other buildings. So I'm using some chipboard backing, and I'm just trimming it to size to fit. And then I'm getting a piece of thin XPS that I have on hand that I pre-cut many moons ago, so it's ready and raring to go. Slap on some tacky glue to the back, to one side of the chipboard, glue it down to the XPS, and then trim around. It's a pretty simple process how I make my doors, and I don't see a reason to change. No. This is, like I said, I wanted this to be in the same style, so I wanted to keep away with how I have done doors in the past. And again, it's just a matter of trimming and test fitting, trimming off small tiny bits. And now I'm just texturing it in a similar way with a plastic grout brush, and then using my expensive sculpting tool, a pencil, to draw in the individual plank lines. Test fit it, happy with how it fits, pull it out, and then basically put it off the side for later. Hey, it's later. I'm just basically hot gluing it in real quick, and then I'm going to place the door in and worry about other steps later. Again, this is similar in the way I do other doors. Now, I want a row of bricks along the base, so I'm going to be hot gluing them on. Being that the house itself is plastic, PVA really isn't going to work. Super glue will melt the foam, so hot glue is the way to go. So I'm just putting 2 lines of bricks around the base of the entire building. Now I gotta make a bunch of shingles. I already have this chunk of foam that I've run through my shingle jig. And I'm gonna use my plastic grout brush to texture the ends of the shingles and the side of the shingle with each time I pass through. So I don't, because once you get them cut thin like that, they are very delicate and the brush will rip them apart. So in between each cut, I am going to run the grout brush along the edge so that shingles are already textured when I make the cut. So I don't have to worry about that later. Now, I have a bunch of pre-cut timber for, doing the framing and making it look pretty. But the timber I do have pre-cut is cut to around 1/4 of an inch thick, and I actually tried using it or putting it up against the building, and it just didn't look right. It was too big, too thick. So I have to cut down some thinner timbers for this build. I think I wound up going with an 1/8 of an inch instead of a 1/4 inch. And as you can see, I'm texturing it prior to cutting as much as possible, just because when it gets down to that small, the timbers get pretty delicate. So this will actually save me a little bit of a step later. Now the sides aren't going to be textured, but the tops will, and that will be the main focus of what you see the building. But again, this is just running it through my prox on here, cutting it to roughly an 1/8 of an inch strips. I'll probably wind up cutting way more than I need, but it's better to have more than you need than need more than you have. Now that I've got all my timbers ready to go and to be put on the building, I'm going to start adding them. I'm going to run a line of timbers along all the brickwork because I like the way it looks. And anywhere else it's going to need to go. Again, I'm using hot glue because against the plastic, it's just the best way to secure it for now. At least with the materials that I have on hand. I'm also going to be doing the door frame and basically anywhere that the timbers need to go along the edges. I want to hide the seams where the two buildings meet, just to cover up that gnarly, nasty look. Because there's not some big holes there that I don't want to fill up with putty. So timber it is. But again, here you can see I'm actually doing the door frame, running it up, trimming it to gluing it in, and then trimming it to where it needs to be. Again, this is just me adding timbers anywhere I think it looks good, covering up cracks, holes, and all of that good stuff. Sometimes you add stuff to cover up mistakes or big gaping holes. Now in the back here, I've got this big blank slate where I covered up the door and the window. I want to add some visual interest to that, so I'm cutting in some angle pieces that look like supports. I think there's an actual reason for this. I'm not an architect. I work for some, but I'm not one myself. Again, I'm just adding pieces in to fit for visual interest, and that big space is just boring on its own, so these will definitely add a visual interest to the piece. And here it's time to start shingling. And this is what I like about shingle jigs. No individual shingles. Because adding individual shingles can damage your soul. Right, Carl? This is just a matter of laying a bead of hot glue down, adding a strip, and make sure to off-center each strip so you don't have like a row of shingles, that big long line. It's a simple process. Just offset it a little bit, and you just keep adding row after row after row. It can be a little monotonous, honestly, but
in the end, it's worth it. Now, I have to do the front and the back. Now, this can be a little bit tedious trying to trim the different shingles around, or the strips of shingles around the windows and the other parts of the roof, but oh no, it's not that bad. It's just a matter of laying it down. I glue it on and then I trim for the most part, except in between the two windows on the roof. But it's just a matter of some simple trimming. It's really not that difficult with a little practice. It can be frustrating at times because there were a few times that I made a sailor blush when I was doing this. But in the end, it's just a matter of laying the pieces down or test fitting them, trimming them, and then gluing them down. It's really not that bad. And as you can see, it all gets on. Now, I want to cover up where the shingles, the edge of the shingles here, and so I'm using some of those timber pieces that I made earlier, and then gluing down a bead, and then just covering it up. It's pretty simple it's a simple little step, but it makes it look so much better. Now, as you can see, for the very top of the roof, I had added a little piece along the roof just to give it so it's not quite as flat. And then I'm just using these pieces and covering up the end there. Okay, time out to break out my homemade texture paste. Anywhere there would be plaster or mortar on a building, I'm just going to paint on a layer of this paste that I make. It's a pretty simple process where there's no timber or no stone or bricks. I'm going to paint this on. Put it on pretty thick and heavy. Not really. It doesn't even have to be that thick. It's just enough to give texture to make it look like mortar. Well, there's a lot of delicate foam shingles, so they're going to need this black Mod Podge. The Mod Podge will help protect the shingles from breakage, and it will also, a few loose ones that may or may not be there, it'll actually help hold them down too. Don't be shy about putting it on, but don't go so heavy that you lose your texturing. But again, this is a step that I highly, highly recommend you do if you do a lot of shingles, because it's going to protect it. I'm also going to be Mod Podging any foam areas, the bricks, the timber, and if you get it on where the plaster is, that's no big deal. You know, I mean, it's all going to be painted over anyway, so whoopee. But I'm just doing this to protect the foam, to give it a little extra durability. Okay, now I need to primer, or basically I just want to paint all the windows, the window frames black. And also, I wish I would have done this before I glued all the cardboard backing into the windows, painted them black ahead of time, but it's a simple little mistake that's easily fixed. I'm just priming everything black with my airbrush. Of course, I'm going to give the building a zenithal highlight. In all honesty, I don't think it really matters with the paint I'm going to be using, because I don't think it's really going to show through in the end. Eventually, I do want to play around with inks, so I just keep doing this to get myself in the habit of doing the zenithal highlight, which the inks really like. But again, this is just a quick zenithal highlight with a really light gray, just to enhance like the shadows of where different pieces hang over and whatnot like that. And of course here, anything that's wood, like shingles, timbers, whatever, I'm painting with a dark brown. I'm using a burnt umber. And just, like I said, anything that's wood gets a coat with this. I'm going for like a 100% coverage if I can with this, 95 to 100% coverage. This is just the base coat of a little triad I always do. Now that I've got the base coat on all the wood, the shingles and the timber, I'm going to do a mid-tone overbrush, like 75 to 85% coverage of a mid-tone brown. I think I'm using a nutmeg brown here. So, again, get some paint on. Like I said, this is just a heavy overbrush. Real quick, real simple, over anything that's wood. And here I'm using a light mocha with my Dollar Tree makeup brush, doing a quick, real light dry brush over the wood. Like I said, I like to use a triad system, dark, medium, light. Use whatever shades of brown you want, but I do suggest a dark, a mid-tone, and a light for the highlight. Pretty quick, pretty simple. And doing this actually brings out all the details, and all the work that you put in prior to paint starts to show up now. And here I want to start painting all the plaster areas. I think I'm using a territorial beige here. Basically anywhere that's not wood on the walls, and not the windows either. Just basically painting on the territorial beige for all the plaster. And here I'm just using a khaki over the plaster. I have like a dry brush, overbrushed, somewhere in between there. Just to basically bring up all the texture and whatnot on the whole piece for where there's plaster. Pretty simple and easy. Here I'm using a dark blue gray, and all the bricks are getting coated with this. I like the blue gray because it just feels, I don't know, it feels like more organic or whatnot. I don't know really how to describe it. I just like the way the dark blue gray looks better than like a standard dark gray. My personal choice. It's my terrain. Now that the bricks are dry, or well, close enough to dry, I'm picking out a few individual bricks and then painting them colors other than gray, just for visual interest at the finished product. Can you skip this step? Oh yeah, absolutely, and it'll still look really good. But I like doing this just to give it a little extra there. You know what I mean? I use 3 different colors when I do this. I have this like custom colors I made that I'm just using up, that I have no other use for anymore. And now that I've picked out all the different color bricks, individual bricks, I'm doing an overbrush with a mid-tone gray, I think pewter gray, and basically going like in 75 to 85% coverage over all the bricks. Pretty quick, pretty simple. But again, And as you can see, it's toning down those different color bricks. You're still going to be able to see it a little bit towards the end. So it's not like so in your face, but it's there. And then a quick light dry brush with a light gray over all the bricks, just to highlight any like dings or dents and the edges of all the bricks. Okay, going to be using my homemade dark brown wash just to grunge it up and dirty it up and seep into the crevices and cracks of what I may have put too much paint on and got to where I didn't want it to be. So the whole thing is getting washed. Every last inch of this thing will have this dark brown wash on it. And I said, I want the dark, dingy, the shadows, and everything just to be there. Now that the wash is dry, you can see I've lost a lot of the highlights. So I'm going to go back over with whatever the last paint that I highlighted with. Like with the wood, I'm using the light mocha and doing a real quick light dry brush just to bring up the edges and show a lot more, make the details of all the effort that I put in texturing and whatnot to pop a lot more. And of course you got to do the same with the plaster here, just to make it pop a little more. Make it still look dirty and nasty, and that's what I want. But I do want some of the detail and the texture to show and pop a little more. So again, I'm going over with the khaki, I think, just to make it pop and make it look pretty. And then the same as the previous two steps, I gotta bring up the highlights and details of the bricks. So I'm using the light gray again. Should I have done the highlight dry brushing prior to the wash? I'm in the opinion yes, but I like the way it wound up looking. And now I'm using some homemade pigment powder, and I just want to bring in some dirt and shadows in extra different places, just to bring up like anywhere dirt and grunge would collect, like in the crevices and corners, just to give it like a dirty, dusty feeling, if that makes any sense. But that's what I'm going for here. At least that's what I'm telling myself in my head when I was doing this. And now to add some moss to the piece. I add moss to everything, honestly, just about anyhow. It's great at hiding screw-ups and pieces that you just couldn't cover with paint or something else. But also put it in places where moss might collect, in corners and crevices, and anywhere that you think it would look like it belongs there. But again, also it's good at hiding mistakes. Or like big holes or somewhere that you just screwed up on. But then after I'm done adding the moss paste, I'm going to get some Woodland Scenics Fine Turf Yellow and then just sprinkle it on to highlight the moss itself. Just give it a little different visual interest. And as you can see, it actually fits in really well with my other builds. And with all the miniatures sitting right there, you can see that it actually does scale well. And these are 28 millimeter miniatures. It scales well with them. So I couldn't be happier with how this turned out. And you know what? It looks pretty.
Hey everybody, if you made it this far, it means you watched to the end, and as always, I greatly appreciate it. If you liked the video, hit the thumbs up. If you want to see more, click subscribe. More videos are coming. If you want to get a hold of me directly, check the Discord link down below, or just leave a comment. I read all my comments. I really do. If you check out some of my videos, you'll see that I do respond. So I am reading them. Again, guys, can't thank you enough for watching. I'm really happy with how this turned out. I may actually do more because I said it was fun. It really was. I did enjoy doing this. So would I do a whole village of them? No. No, but I like these because it will give a little bit of difference in the buildings, and I won't have like the whole multiples of the same building over and over again. But a house like this is great for mixing it up from your standard build. So go to the Dollar Tree, or if you don't have a Dollar Tree, look online. You could probably find cheap like dollhouses like this, or pound shops, or any of those cheap stores where they sell like weird dirt cheap stuff. You might be able to find something that'll work. Old toys, we can use them. Just because they got little dolls doesn't mean we can't put demons and skeletons in them. All right, guys. Thanks for everything. And as always, remember, when you're making your terrain, remember, the only person you got to worry about is you, because it's your terrain.